John Kirby is the National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House. And John, the families earlier that gave the press conference, they are asking for the United States to help them. They're looking for specifics. Will they get any of that from President Biden when he speaks at 1 o'clock today?
I think you'll hear specifically the president address the concerns of American citizens that are in Israel, those that unfortunately we know have perished, those who are missing, those who are wounded. He will absolutely address those concerns, and he will make it clear that we have offered and will continue to offer hostage recovery assistance and expertise to the Israelis as they might deem appropriate. Now, I will tell you, Dana, we don't know right now here at 10 o'clock in the morning whether we can't confirm that Americans are in the pool of folks that are being held hostage by Hamas. We have to accept the grim possibility that that could turn out to be true. But as we're speaking right now, we don't know whether any Americans are in that group.
Well, John, it's Bret Baier. We obviously heard from families of Americans in Israel who say that their family members are being held hostage, despite that lack of confirmation on your side. There is this call for the U.S. to do more. Is there more that can be done currently?
In terms of the hostage crisis, again, we're focused right now on making sure that we make available. We have great expertise here in the law enforcement intelligence community and even in the military on hostage recovery techniques and tactics, and we are offering that expertise to the Israelis, and obviously we'll continue to work with them. We're also working to improve the information flow and intelligence sharing between us and the Israelis, specifically with regard to this hostage crisis. Obviously, this is more difficult than any other sort of a normal hostage or wrongful detention scenario because we don't know how many they have, really. We don't know where they are, and it's an active scene of war. It's active combat right now, which greatly complicates any kind of recovery operation or endeavor. Doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye to it. And even if there are no Americans in this group, we're still going to offer that support to Israel as best we can and as much as they'll accept.
But are you ruling out some kind of special operation to rescue American citizens?
I'm not ruling anything in or out, Brett. We're not prepared to do that at this time. We just don't have enough information to get into policy possibilities and options. We obviously take the safety and security of Americans overseas very seriously. President Biden has made that clear, and bringing home now almost 40 Americans that were wrongfully detained. We'll certainly act with that same sense of alacrity and urgency here and seriousness. But again, we just don't have the numbers to confirm. We don't have the information to be able to talk with any great specificity about what the options might be.
I think it's important to everybody to hear some very tough things. And from the Jerusalem Post within the last hour, the tweet from Avi Meyer is that the stories from southern Israel get worse by the hour. A woman found murdered with a fetus next to her, still attached to its umbilical cord. An elderly woman found in a pool of blood, her body riddled with bullet holes. Entire families found burned to death in their homes. What is President Biden's level of alarm about the barbarity that we are hearing about?
It's high, Dana. It's high. Those images and those stories, I mean, they're just gut-wrenching, and it just speaks to the barbarity and the difference here. This is not 2014, and there's a difference here in the level of violence and brutality and just depravity that Hamas has now visited on innocent Israeli citizens, and quite frankly, putting Palestinians in Gaza at further risk by the way they're behaving. There is a difference here, and we understand the rage. We understand the great sense of urgency that Israeli officials and the Israeli people have right now. And that's why we're working really hard to make sure that Israel has the tools and capabilities to defend itself and to go after these barbarians, these terrorists in Hamas. And the first tranche of security assistance is already on the way to Israel. And I mean first since these attacks. Obviously, we have a pre-existing relationship with Israel. And there will be more coming. And you'll hear the president talk about that today as well.
I heard you yesterday say that you hadn't made a direct connection to Iran in this instance, but you acknowledged that Iran funds Hamas and Hezbollah permanently and that money flows. There's a lot of talk about the $6 billion and the American hostage exchange. I heard you also say that it can be frozen at any time. Why isn't this the time to freeze that?
I don't have any policy decisions with respect to that to speak to you today, Brett. I think it's important for people to remember that not a single dinar of those funds has gone into Iran. Not one, not any. Nothing's been allocated out of that fund.
Yeah, John,
and we're going to watch
this block. Money's fungible. You get $6 billion over here for humanitarian and food, so then you can move money someplace else. And then you have the not enforcing sanctions that allows Iran to cash in on its oil around the world.
Brett, with all due respect, I just got to push back on you there. It's not that we're not enforcing sanctions. We have been enforcing them. As a matter of fact, we've added sanctions. We've sanctioned 400 entities in Iran just in the beginning of this administration, let alone the sanctions that came before us. And as for the fungibility, again, that money was never going to be tapped by the Iranian regime. They were never going to see it themselves. It was always going to go to vendors that we approved to go to buy humanitarian assistance and medical and food to get directly to the Iranian people. The regime was never going to see that or feel that, and they haven't asked for it. And the other thing I'll say, Brett, just before we get off this topic,
No, John, I want to just push back on one thing. You said that the sanctions are being enforced. The Iranian exports of oil to China, 2020, $6.6 billion. 2021, $23.1 billion. 2022, $30 billion. So how is that enforcing the sanctions on Iran?
We're mindful that Iranian oil is still on the market, and it is a global market.
But I mean, that's a lot of money, right?
Supply and demand have to be balanced, but I'm telling you that we are enforcing the sanctions, and we're adding sanctions to the regime. But back on that $6 billion, it's not like the Iranians were ever going to be able to get all $6 billion or even $1 billion at a time. The idea would be it would be allocated in very small chunks. So the idea that even if they had started to draw on that fund, that it would be able to fund Hamas,
let's just move that aside. Let's just say that that's fine. The $6 billion is not moving. But there's billions and billions of other dollars. And is there a look now at Iran policy because of what's being funneled to Hamas and Hezbollah?
There has always been a review of Iran policy, and we have always been looking for ways to continue to hold Iran accountable for their destabilizing activities. We've added military capability in the Gulf, now into the Eastern Med. We've added additional sanctions to the regime against Iran. We've never not taken our eye off Iran. We've never not considered how we're going to pursue dealing with the kinds of things that they're doing in the region and beyond. And all this talk about, pursuing diplomacy, we haven't worked on the nuclear deal for many, many months because it was clear that Iran wasn't interested in negotiating in good faith. So that's all been but moribund. So yes, look, we're constantly looking at Iran policy to make sure that we're doing the proper things to hold them accountable.
The president is not shy about calling out MAGA Republicans, as he calls them. In this scenario, in this situation, you have people within the Democratic Party, members of Congress, who have said some very vile things, despite all that we've just talked about in terms of the barbarity. In his remarks today, will President Biden call out those members of his own party for those remarks, which should absolutely be rejected?
Well, without getting into too many specifics on the speech itself, I think you will hear very clearly from President Biden today the need for all Americans to unite in support of Israel and what they're going through. And you'll hear him also deliver a strong message to the American people about wrapping our arms around the Jewish community here in this country, making sure that they can worship and they can live in peace and security, and they don't have to worry about threats of violence to themselves and to their places of worship. So you will hear a unifying message from President Biden on that score.
I think anti-Semitism is just something that it's reared its ugly head. It is shocking to some people to see. And I wanted to just put up this poll. This is from Gallup. And they looked at a poll of people's support for Israel versus Palestinians. In 2013, if we could pull this up here, I don't have the numbers in front of me. In 2013, you had the majority of Democrats, 55%, supporting Israelis. Today, that's at 38%. And the president is the leader of the Democratic Party. He's also the leader of the free world. Does he have a responsibility to try to turn those numbers back around? And can he do that today, starting today?
he also has been historically and remains a key supporter of Israel all the way back to his time in the Senate. Nobody has more respect for the Israeli state or the Israeli people than President Biden. And again, Dana, I think you'll hear him talk very plainly and forthrightly about that today, about the importance of maintaining that support for Israel, how important that is, not just to the Israeli people, but to our national security interests in the region as well. And then again, pushing back on any temptation by anybody to engage in anti-Semitism here at home against the Jewish people.
Let me ask you about other countries that obviously we are allied with in a number of different ways, and the statements coming out from them. One of the most eyebrow-raising, I guess, was from Qatar, which basically said Israel alone is responsible for what we've seen, the attacks. We operate with Qatar. We have U.S. troops there. We had base in Doha. What do we say to Qatar in that statement?
Well, look, I mean, the Qataris are important partners in the region. They were key in helping us get those 5 Americans home. And you're right, Brett, we have lots of mutual interest and shared concerns with Qatar. That doesn't mean we agree with them on everything they say, and we certainly don't agree with that comment whatsoever. The Israeli people, Israel as a state, they're the victims here by just a brutal set of terrorists who obviously were planning this very complex set of attacks for many, many months. We're going to stand solidly with Israel. We've made that clear privately to them, and we're going to make that clear publicly.
Hey, John, we know you're going 24/7 here,
yeah,
and you've been on the air forever, and we appreciate you coming on. And I've seen you, listen to and see some of these horrific images and stories coming out of Israel, and at times in different interviews get choked up. I mean, it's kind of tough over time.
Brett, it's just, I mean, I don't know how you can, as a human being, look at these images and hear these stories, some of the stories you were just talking about before I came on, and not feel it in your gut. These are families. These are brothers, sisters, moms, dads. I mean, we all can relate to that. Everybody can relate to that. It's absolutely reprehensible. And yes, I apologize for losing my composure at times. That's never a good thing, and I shouldn't do that. But
that's not true, John. That's not true. You got to be yourself, and you got to be human, and you have a very tough job. And we appreciate you coming on, and our viewers appreciate it too. We'll probably talk to you a little bit later today as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.